Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 12 o'clock Department Head Budget Presentation Meeting of May 5th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kaur, Councilmember Arias, Councilmember Gonzalez,
Here.
Councilmember Weir, Councilmember Smith,
I'm here.
Councilmember Coman,
Here.
and Councilmember Bashir Tosh.
Here.
Thank you. In keeping with Council's resolution, public statements are now received at different times depending on the item, and we'll call on the City Clerk to call for public statements. If you wish to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and place it in the tray next to the speaker podium. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on today's agenda or on a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific agenda item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda public statements. If you're here to speak on an item not listed on the meeting agenda, you will be called first to speak. Statements are given a 2-minute time limit per speaker, 20 minutes total for all non-agenda item public statements. If you're here to speak on an item listed on the agenda, I will call for you at the appropriate time. If public statements become disruptive and I have to clear the chambers to regain order of the meeting, you'll be called in one at a time to provide your public statement when your item is called. Everyone in attendance is expected to adhere to the rules of decorum established by resolution of the City Council. Failure to abide by the city's rules of decorum, including any disruptive behavior that interferes with our ability to have an orderly and efficient meeting, prevents the City Council from conducting the business of the city. Consider this a first warning to everyone in attendance that conduct that disrupts the meeting may result in expulsion and/or the chambers being cleared. Behavior that disrupts the meeting includes repetitive statements, shouting, hate speech, interrupting staff or presenters during the meeting, speaking out of turn, outbursts from the audience, and surpassing the 2-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items not on the agenda?
Mayor Go, we have not received any speaker cards regarding items not listed on today's agenda, nor have we received public speaker cards for items listed on the agenda.
Oh, thank you. We could have saved all of that wonderful introduction. Madam Clerk, the next item.
Reports item 3A, fiscal year 2025 department budget presentations, budget workshop number 1.
Mr. Clegg.
Mayor, City Council members, are pleased to be here with you today to provide one of 2 of our budget workshops. This is typical for those who have been through it in past years. We have a fairly similar format. As requested by council, we've created a more standardized template for each of the departments to follow in giving their presentations. And we've tried to focus on the key information to then allow council time for discussion and questions, knowing that, of course, you have all this information available to you to review both in the meeting and outside the meeting. What these workshops are designed to do is provide council with a lot of information on a really large budget and not necessarily try to make all those decisions at this point in time. As is typical, the process will be that in the first meeting of June, we'll have a public hearing related to the proposed budget, and then final adoption of the budget at the second meeting in June. What we do spending the month of May is to provide information to council, answer those questions, get feedback, and then bring back a proposed budget that's reflective of the council questions and feedback, and also, of course, council priorities as established in your recent council workshop. So again, the intent here is to provide a lot of information as succinctly as we can, but in a meaningful way, because there's a lot of importance in the budget adoption for the council, as well as give opportunities to answer questions and talk through issues. We, as has been noted prior to this council and public meetings, is that our budget scenario this year is that revenues continue to be fairly flat, but costs are increasing, and so we have, as staff, identified a way to bring forward to council a balanced budget. We've cut some of our discretionary costs out of what we'll propose back to council. But then there's some limited funding for capital projects, and typically we'll propose the full slate of capital projects. One difference this year is that we're going to ask council to deliberate on a certain menu of capital projects, and you'll have to pick a smaller number of projects than what is out there as potential projects. That's the one difference, but we'll bring that at our next workshop on May 19th, whereas just to walk through that with the council, which again, the decision making is in June, but we'll tee all that information up for you at the May 19th workshop, along with a few additional departments. But for today, we're going to walk through the departments that are slated, and I get to kick us off with general government and the city manager's office and the functions that we have in our office.
So you're going to model this succinct but meaningful way of presenting, right?
Well stated, Mayor, indeed.
Yeah, just your words.
Yes. So you'll see here from our budget that there's an actual overall reduction. That is not kudos to us for identifying significant savings. We actually had 2 positions that are moving from the city manager's office into finance. That's our budget officer and our budget analyst were last year budgeted in the city manager's office, moved now to finance. We did identify some savings in discretionary accounts, but those are smaller than the large personnel savings that you can see there. But overall, our budget, by comparison to most departments, fairly small. And you can see how we're trending year over year, and fairly consistent with the exception of that reduction of those 2 positions to another spot. Again, no major notable changes. We also have moved 1 position from one division to another division within the office. That was our management assistant. But within the overall city manager's office, so no budget change there. Just a couple of notes. Typically, the city manager's office does not have large capital projects. Those go to other departments. When we created the Community Vitality Unit to respond to our most urgent homelessness needs and challenges, we housed that within the city manager's office, kind of like we did our Office of Violence Intervention and Prevention, because it was so strategic. So we're still working on implementation of community vitality, and we do, by the way, for your council's awareness, still continue to have a set aside of $2 million from prior budget years related to the jail bed issue that has not been expended, and we would recommend continuing to carry that forward this next year. As noted, we just have those limited changes that we made. That's not a reduction in overall workforce. It's just shifting where some of those individuals report to. I think it is worth noting that we have our community relations or our marketing communications group and our Office of Violence Prevention group that are housed within the city manager's office beyond our executive and administrative staff. Shifting gears, city clerk's office is part of the city manager's office. We are very pleased with the service of our city clerk and her team, but we're presenting on behalf of the overall city manager's office today. You'll note there that an overall reduction as well for the city clerk's office. We were able to achieve that with some small savings in some of our software costs in the operations line, but city clerk has done a good job of keeping it lean with a lean team and coming in with a flat budget. There have been no staffing changes over a multi-year period in the clerk's office. We've made some adjustments within the staffing complement to find the best mix of positions to best support the council. Again, we continue to see our materials and supplies across the board be a challenge in maintaining, but we were able to find some savings, as noted already, in our subscription costs. Was a busy election year this last year with several wards, both going through the election process as well as the installation process. We continue to support the Conflict of Interest Code updates, Teen Government Day, and we're pleased again that we've been able to make progress and having better technology to support the City Council with our agenda process. Our Risk Management Division, also part of the City Manager's Office. This is an area where we see some very large increases. You'll note that the one personnel change was just, again, shifting that position from the City Manager's Office to Risk. Otherwise, their position count has remained consistent. But the real increase is on our insurance and costs. Our insurance costs are significantly up, and that's what's driving these, $1 million increases in this budget line items. And it's affecting multiple other departments as well, where we distribute some costs from risk, but risk specifically has contracts that they manage that are up significantly. This just gives a little bit more of the detail. This was reflected in the PSVS memo that you saw previously. And this is for citywide, but you'll note, we're seeing 19%, increase in operational costs. That's our physicals. That's a smaller number. But then when you look at our liability insurance, a $1 million increase change there. Workers' comp, $3 million increase. And these are costs that are very hard for us to control. We work closely with departments to do early detection of workers' comp issues, but the liability rates and the workers' comp rates are set by actuarial reports and hard costs to manage in the short run. Visit Bakersfield, also part of the city manager's office, our communications and marketing team, and we've been able to see really good success in the synergies between our help team, our Visit Bakersfield team, and our communications team as we've had them combined over this past year. From a budget standpoint, again, we've seen a little bit of savings there, just with some shifts in specific classifications and how we charge against those different positions. And we also saw a slight increase, even though you'll note there that the TOT amount shows a 3% reduction. That's not overall TOT, that's just the amount of TOT going to Visit Bakersfield. The good news in TOT is that it's up overall. But we had a small reduction in how much is coming from TOT to balance out those reductions in operations and personnel. As I noted, we've seen a lot of good synergy, and so that's why we've got our social media presence enhanced. We continue to have success in getting good events here. Our events are actually up. We were able to capture a couple of one-time events or conferences, plus keep some of the really important ones like the wrestling championships and the Jehovah's Witnesses conventions that bring lots of visitors. We were able to capture some one-time events that have kept Visit Bakersfield pretty busy over this past year. And with that, open to questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Council members? Madam Clerk, I don't see any request to speak. No, so something's not set up correctly. Right. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg, for your presentation. I appreciate it. I just had some general kind of questions since you're the first one up, and we're going to be talking to different departments. So I wanted to provide some context for the council and then also for the general public. First and foremost, California Department of Finance reported last week that Bakersfield remains one of the fastest growing cities among the 10 largest cities. We grew at a rate of 1.2% over the last year. We are quickly moving to become the 8th largest city. I think we will overtake Oakland in population in the next couple of years. Can you provide us some context as it relates to the scope of work throughout the city? How many, miles of street do we maintain? How many traffic lights? I mean, I think we need to provide some context here as it relates to the growing city that you're managing and that we have a responsibility to oversee.
Thank you, Councilmember, Mayor, and Council. We have, we do continue to grow. Our estimates are that we're beyond the 415,000 population, and if you look at the metropolitan area, there's another plus 1,000 residents that are in unincorporated areas that are, pockets in and surrounding Bakersfield. We have 160 square miles that we patrol and provide, fire protective services for, and that we, continue to build out lane miles and repair lane miles for. I actually couldn't tell you off the top of my head, although Public Works will get a chance to tell you how many thousands of lane miles we have, but it is thousands. We also have thousands of miles of landscaping that we maintain. We have, it's actually, the last figure that I can recall is relates to streetlights and traffic signals. We also have thousands of streetlights and traffic signals throughout the city.
So I
Yeah.
looked up the numbers from 2022, if I
thank you.
can.
Yeah, sure.
We had 1,492 miles of street in 2022. We had 447 traffic signals, 1,107 miles of sanitary sewer to maintain. It's, of course, 61 parks, which equated to around 662 acres that our teams are responsible for maintaining. But my bigger point was when ever since I've been on the council, we've always talked about staff per 1,000 residents. And I think that's a really good indicator to really help us understand that, as the city grows, it makes sense that we have more to maintain, and it makes sense that, incrementally on the margins, we will have to add additional employees. But when you take a look at the number of city employees per capita, I think it's really interesting. When I looked at the year 2000, we had 5.4 city employees per 1,000 residents. Last year, in 2024, we had 4.84. So if you compare us to where we were 25 years ago, we're doing a lot more work with a lot fewer city staff per capita in this community. And I think that speaks to A, management, B, the fiscal responsibility of the city over the years, and C, obviously employing technology and new strategies and being innovative to deliver services as best we can as a city. Certainly there's a lot of room to grow. There's always room to improve, and we hear from the community all the time in ways in which we can improve. But I think it's worth noting, and it's important for us to communicate to the public the real capacity issue and how we're able to deliver services in such a strategic staffing level.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. And I would add, we do try to pay close attention to staffing levels of what we would consider benchmark or comparable cities to see how both they're, just managing capacity, but also the best ideas that are coming up from other areas. And then, Bakersfield, many cities talk about whether they're a full-service city or not. That's a kind of a term of art used in public administration. And Bakersfield clearly is a full-service city. We have multiple utilities that we provide. We, have each of the core, lines of business that a typical municipality would have. And then, as a large city now, we're also, trying to handle some of the challenges that large cities also face, and to a degree also be responsive to the feedback from the community about the quality of life type of issues that they would like to see. And my read over the last 5 years that I've been here is that there's increased interest in the city addressing some of the quality of life issues that that maybe historically hadn't been as high a priority. But as we grow and become a metropolitan area, there's more interest in trying to address some of those issues. Of course, we focus on the essential services. We focus on our public safety. We focus on providing good streets and roads for commerce and people to get back and forth. But we're also seeing individuals increasing interest in having quality public spaces to visit, like parks or amenities that might be in a commercial core, as well as, of course, the ongoing challenge around homelessness. And we've built up, multiple teams in the last 5 years to address the impacts of homelessness as well as homeless services. And then also related to just really clean up, and some of what is left behind around the impacts of homelessness, wanting to be very responsive there. And then actually our ability to start working on some of the look and feel code enforcement, and has been a pretty strong emphasis to get out and address, where we have substandard, building situations or substandard commercial situations. And so yes, Bakersfield has a very, very diverse and complicated set of services that we provide to the community.
Do you have anything further?
Oh, thank you.
Councilmember Bashir Tosh.
I was wondering, Mr. Clegg, if will we be getting a more itemized list of what personnel and operations is, or is this is it?
For the purpose of the presentations of each of the departments today, this will be the level of detail that we're presenting for each of the departments. As you get a proposed budget book, there'll be a few more layers of detail underneath that. But if there are specific areas you want to ask questions about around personnel and operations, we're happy to go into those.
How soon after this meeting will we get that proposed budget book? Because I see the significance of being able to dive deeper in regards to hundreds of millions of dollars than just this.
It'll be in the next few weeks as we finalize in this month. You'll have it, of course, before the public hearing in June. Typically, we deliver it mid-May.
The meeting's on the 19th, right?
Correct.
Okay, because the last budget book was, is it going to be 400 or 500 pages?
Probably, yes. I'm trying to remember, but it's very thick, yes.
Okay, I would just like to say hopefully we can get that as quickly as possible so that we all have an opportunity to be thorough in regards to all of this.
Noted.
No further questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you talk a little bit more about you made a remark about whether we're a full service city. Do other cities not provide the services we provide?
Yes, there are many cities that do not provide all the services that we provide. Both, I would say there are some that you might consider optional or ancillary. There are many cities that do not provide those, but even some of the core services, some cities will contract those out, or the county might provide those. But I would say most cities of our size, of course, are providing most of those services. And in fact, there are some cities of our size and even a little bit smaller that start to get into other spaces like public health and human services that are historically more of a county service or perhaps a nonprofit service. But some large cities have decided to take some of those issues on directly. Most cities don't provide those types of services. And most cities are, most counties, provide those types of other services.
So looking ahead as we prepare to maybe move from 9 to 8 or wherever we're going to wind up, is there a way to look at those cities to see how we compare in terms of dollars coming in and what we're spending? Is there a way to see that comparison?
Absolutely. In fact, as we were preparing for the personnel committee later this week, we're going to just provide because we're looking at positions as requested by the chair. We're looking at our vacant positions. We're going to just provide some context as to what is our employee count versus the other 16 cities that not 16, we went from 16 now down to 12. The 12 cities that the council by resolution had established as our comparable market benchmark cities. We're going to look at both budget and employee count for those other cities, and it'll be very easy to share that out with the full council.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on amount of employees that we have per capita in other cities. That was brought up, back when we were talking about Measure N and how we were the lowest at, or near the low end at that time. And I just would point out also, as we've had a decrease in the employees per constituent, we've had a big increase in responsibilities. As you mentioned, homelessness, we've got park rangers, we've got rapid response teams, and services, many services that we did not offer back in 2000. And so it's an expansion of responsibilities and still a reduction in employees per capita. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't see any other questions, so let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Moving on now to Technology Services. Mr. Pronovus.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Greg Pronovos, Technology Services Director, here to prepare our proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26. The Technology Services Department has a proposed budget of just over $23 million for the coming year. That is an 11% increase over the current year, which accounts for a $3.5 million increase that is currently offset by a $1.1 million decrease in CIP projects for the coming year. The majority of that increase occurs in our operational costs, primarily due to the implementation of new software and systems during the current year and annual increases of existing software and systems, which vary between 3 and 10% annually. Capital costs had a modest increase. This is due to a shift from a capital heavy budget to a more operational budget as more systems migrate to the cloud. In years past, we used to be heavy on capital and lighter on operational costs. A lot of the companies we do business with tend to migrate their systems to the cloud, so we have to follow suit in that regard. Although it's still an increase, it is much smaller than it has been in years past. Also, we've done a lot of work over the last year in technology services, primarily around the new radio system. We've deployed all the portable radios out to the police and fire department and have begun doing the installation of the mobile radios in the vehicles, and we hope to have that completed shortly into the new fiscal year here. We've also installed a fiber connection between PD headquarters and ECC over at the county to facilitate the installation of the radio cores, one which will be located at PD, the other one over at the communications center over at the county. The two cores will talk with one another, implementing the regional radio system. We've also have worked through the detailed design review. We're going to look at closing that out in the coming 2 months and switching over into the construction phase of the project. There are 6 sites identified for the Bakersfield cell of the regional radio system that we will start building out over the next year and a half. On other departmental fronts, we've completed 18 citywide projects over the past year, and we've deployed over 1,300, almost 1,400 pieces of equipment that was due to be replaced during the year. For the coming year, we're not asking for any additional employees. The only personnel change that we had was the ending of a temporary engineer 1 position at a savings of about $47,000 a year. We had that position to help facilitate our communications team. We had a relatively new engineer that took that role on when the old engineer retired. We kept him on for a year to transfer that knowledge. My last slide is to kind of share some of the successes that we've had in technology services, primarily due to the benefits we've received from PSVS. For that, we've two of the notable developments over the last 4 years is the implementation of a security management team within technology services that consists of a supervisor and 4 analysts. Through that team, we're able to do what's called red and blue teams, where half of the team tries to infiltrate and look at our weaknesses for the city, while the other half tries to work and plug those holes and so forth. Along with that, on an annual basis, we do a risk assessment that's done through the risk manager's office. And the last year when we had that, we received above industry average ratings for our risk assessment. Also on an annual basis, we do what's known as penetration testing, where we hire an outside firm to try to break into the city's network and notate all the various, whether it's deficiencies or outdated applications and things of that nature, so that we get a comprehensive report, and then we can work on, again, addressing those concerns. One of the things that I'm very proud of this team is that over the last several years, since we have moved to more of a cloud-based system, one of the things we run the risk with is what are known as account takeovers. For the takeovers that we have witnessed, we have an average response of 24 hours, where the industry average is 72 hours to get that remediated. The other team I wanted to talk a little bit about was our project and data management team. That's another busy team here at Technology Services. That consists of a supervisor, a project coordinator, and on the data analysis side, we've got an engineer and a couple analysts. Since the inception of that team, we have completed 134 projects for the city. We currently have 14 active projects. The data management team converted and brought over decades of data for the ERP project. And they currently manage over 80 terabytes of data within managed systems. Now, again, we use a lot of these weird terms that you may not be familiar with to kind of bring it more into perspective here. 80 terabytes of data is roughly about 6.5 million document pages of like a Word file or a PDF, or about 13,000 filing cabinets of paper. And with that, I open it for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Provost. In your mission statement, you cite enhancing efficiencies and driving strategic digital transformation. Where do you see us going next in this area? How do we compare with other cities, and what might be out there that could drive that digital transformation and make us more efficient?
I think the next big thing is leveraging artificial intelligence. Once we get a handle on that and utilizing AI to augment our staffing requirements and doing some of the more maybe mundane tasks, or providing better insights into research projects, I think that's going to be our next leap forward.
What will that take for us to get there for the next step?
The next steps are one, we have to put some sort of policy in place, some sort of framework around the use of AI here at the city. We're currently working on that within the Technology Services Department in concert with the City Manager's Office. Once that's in place, and you may hear about some AI initiatives in other future presentations here, we will work closely with the departments on the implementation and use of that AI in line of those policies that are developed.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you for the presentation.
Certainly.
I want to jump right in, talk about the radio system, because
Yes.
this was an issue that had been facing the city for a number of years. City Council was able to address the issue thanks to the Public Safety and Vital Services Initiative, making a significant investment, around $20 million. What was the actual amount? Initially it was 18 and then it grew.
Yes, we did a do not exceed value of $27 million for the initial purchase.
For the initial purchase?
Yes.
Okay. But the reason why is our system was old, and
Correct.
we were using analog radios, And we saw the weaknesses in that system. And the prevailing system is digital, that will enhance public safety for our community. And I don't think this gets enough appreciation from any of us on this dais or from the overall community, because this is a significant investment. It's a partnership with the county, but this investment will help improve public safety for years to come. Help me understand exactly where we are in this process, because from what I'm understanding, there were portable radios that were deployed, but yet there's still some construction that's required.
Yes, thank you, council member. Yeah, we are probably in the now second full year of a multi-year project. Again, this is, I've been involved with it since 2016, so it's been almost a decade for myself. Working in partnership with the County of Kern, working with Motorola, who we awarded the contract to. And it is progressing now. We're starting to see some actual movement happening after that first year. So right now we are at the phase where we're finishing up that detailed design review. What needs to happen at the towers? What is the frequencies that we're going to use and so forth? Those details to make the system work. We hope to finish that up around July timeframe, and then start moving into the construction phase where we actually start augmenting the towers. And in the case of the sports village, building a tower from scratch there. So building those towers, augmenting them, and putting the new equipment on there. We've got about a year to maybe a year and a half of construction. So we're looking at a possible system cutover of between July and September of 2027, where the system would be functional to our public safety officers for the Bakersfield cell. The greater county is going to take much longer. That's probably more of a 10-year project. But for the municipal Bakersfield area, that would be the time frame we're looking at.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Second question, I know that there are a lot of software applications that require licensing agreements and renewals, and those things are not, they're not cheap. And I appreciate you sharing with the council that we're moving towards more cloud-based systems, which I think will help in certain ways, help us with creating more efficient processes, and certainly on the back end, help us deliver services in a much more effective way. In the community, and I think for me, the underlying assumption is always, if we adopt additional technology, if we're implementing additional software, that we will see enhanced efficiency and be able to actually save costs over the long run. But you pointed out, in fact, that the budget for this department is actually increasing, and operational costs are increasing by $2.8 million due to the implementation of new software. And so I'm hoping that you can help me square those two things. Is my assumption off that implementing new technology isn't necessarily about efficiencies, or is it about something else, or what's going on here with this operational budget?
Certainly, I will certainly try. Thank you, Councilmember Mayor. Probably a more accurate way of describing that is that the efficiencies are in probably more of time saved based off of software applications, maybe through research, or doing some of those maybe lesser duties that you don't necessarily have to have staff for, or part of your time. So really, the implementation of these technology systems tend to save the end user's time, not necessarily a decrease in staff. So they're more efficient with the time used, rather than maybe a more manual process. I will tell you, you mentioned earlier how the city has grown and technology has grown with it. Going back and looking at the department's budget for 2017, my budget ask for that year was just a little over $7 million. So looking over the 8 years, my budget has increased 217%. That could be a general indicator of how much technology is being used throughout the city now. Because a lot of my budget pertains to what's being used out in the other departments and not necessarily within technology services. For instance, of the $8 million of the budget that is in our equipment fund, I utilize roughly 10% of that for equipment replacements and 16% for equipment replacements and 10% for cybersecurity. The rest of it is used for applications that are used either throughout the city or specific to a department. Some of it is, again, the equipment in use. It's good to point out that citywide, if you wanted to include things such as desk phones, which fall under our domain, cell phones, things of that nature, security system, door access systems, cameras, we manage probably 10 to 12,000 individual devices throughout the city. And we have hundreds of miles of fiber optic cabling, network cabling devices, and so forth for the back end. Again, I gave the simple metric of number of databases that we manage, which was 80 terabytes with. When we get into video data as well as unstructured or just open file systems, we're getting into the petabytes, which are the trillions of files that we manage on a daily basis. So the use of technology throughout the city is increasing. I would imagine that's probably, monetarily wise, each year it's increasing about $2 million. That's not necessarily a linear thing, but, that just shows that the use of technology is increasing throughout the city. There was, going back maybe a decade or so, really all we had to worry about in technology services was the computers and printers sitting on our network. Today I have sewer lift stations sitting on our network. I have park irrigation systems. The complexity of the systems and the interrelatedness of them are far more complex today than they were just 10 years ago. So the use of technology has advanced. The complexity of technology has got more complex. And again, departments are using technology more and more for their lines of business.
Thank you, Greg. That was a great summary, and I would just add a couple of other thoughts because as one who's not quite as technologically knowledgeable as our technology services director, when I saw that number on the budget too, I said, "Whoa, that's a big increase in budget." And so really want to understand what is driving our increase in technology from just a straight numbers fiscal standpoint. And so a couple of observations from that. One, we're still playing a lot of catch up in technology. I wouldn't expect these level of increases to continue every year in future years. One, it's not sustainable fiscally for us. But two, we're still catching up from probably more than a decade of the inability to really advance in our use of technology, and so we've been behind, and so we're playing that catch up. Two is that the way that I'm thinking about how these technology resources affect our efficiencies, absolutely yes, they do. I think a lot of it also though is additive as well. We're able to do more things than we were able to do before. We're able to use the mobile app. We're able to, just the example you mentioned of parks. We're able to save time and money of staff going out and checking the water, or also not overwatering our parks because we have sensors now that tell us whether the level of moisture is enough that we need to put more water out or not. That's becoming much more automated. That's fantastic. Then we can have staff work on other things. And so in many instances, I think we're adding services through the use of greater technology. And then the next piece is that even though we haven't seen significant reductions in staff numbers, we're able to have staff work on better things, more important things, and also avoid needing more staff to go and do more of those automated things. We probably would be, our service levels would reduce, or we would need more staff to do the same things that can now be automated, and so it's allowed us to not, need staff in some of those areas. And then the last thing I would just, add though is, because we have had this rapid adoption of technology to catch up, it's been a good time to take a hard look and say, well, we've tried some of these new software. Do we really need all of those? Are they really producing the results for all the things that we need? And so we've made a couple of decisions in a few areas to say, you know what, that's not really delivering what we thought it was. We can get rid of that. But I think we need to do more of that in this coming year, given this amount. We've asked the departments to take a hard look. And again, some of our biggest adopters have been, again, police and fire, because there's great technology to help them do the work that they do. But is it, again, producing all the results that we want? We're going to take a hard look at some of these pilots we've done and say, do we really need to continue? Or can we scale that back? Or can we find another software? Because it's, it's a very competitive market. Can we find another provider who can do it for us at a much lower cost?
No, I appreciate that response a lot. I was just going to say something similar in that, I love the fact that the city is leaning into adopting new technology, is trying to look for ways in which we can not just be more efficient, but obviously, as Mr. Clegg just mentioned, being more effective in delivering services, enhancing our services, and being more productive. But not all technology is the same, right? Not all software is the same. There's a lot of inferior products out there that we ought to dismiss. And so I would encourage all departments and city management to really discern with a critical eye all these offers and applications that come through City Hall. We really have to make sure that we're getting the best for our investment. So I'm really happy to hear that, Mr. Clegg. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Greg, for your presentation.
Mr. Clegg, a few years ago, we had a consultant do an analysis, risk analysis, and technology was at the very top. How much have we closed or addressed the areas of concern? Is there much left that we have not been able to address?
There are still some areas that we're working on, but I'll let Mr. Pronovo speak to that. And it was our performance audit program produced those findings.
Yes. We are still working on some of the restructure that was recommended. What we've done over the last 2 years is we've kind of looked at our processes, trying to do some process improvement. We've made a lot of improvement in that area. We're looking at whether or not we've got the right people on the right teams. And then something that we're close on completing is putting together those updated technology policies and governance policies in place that have been lacking over the years. So we're close in completing that, but we're not there yet.
Thanks. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to follow up on the radio again. You said you have radio in the vehicles at this time?
Yes, we're installing the new radios in the vehicles.
And they work with the old system?
They do.
So most
band.
of or a lot of Ward 4 Northwest Bakersfield in 2016 did not
Yes.
have any service at all, and we had a lot of dead spots for our police out there. Does the radios alone solve that problem, or we still need towers? I know we're going to locate one in Polo Park out there.
Correct. As a temporary measure until our new system is up and live in late 2027, we're erecting a temporary mobile tower out at Polo Park as a receive site so that when an officer or a firefighter keys up their radio, whether it's either handheld or in the vehicle, that signal gets into the system.
So at this point, we still have dead spots.
We have made some improvements, but yes, there is in the area, there are some areas where the signal may or may not get through. But we have made some improvements by tuning the existing receive stations up at Chevron currently. And we've got the tower on order. And in fact, for that project, I go to my first planning commission meeting in mid-month here. So
Great, thank you. I think it shows how far behind we were and what drastic situation we were in, and progress is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, some of my questions were already addressed by Councilmember Gonzalez, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about this rollout for the radios because I think you said that you have another year in it. First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation so far. I really appreciate that you're knowledgeable about all the different technologies at a detailed level. So I get it. You understand what you're doing out there. So thank you for that. But I wanted to focus on this rollout because you're looking at another year and a half of construction. But did I hear you say that it's a 10-year project, or did I mishear you?
No, overall, it's at least a 10-year project because in cooperation with the County of Kern, it's a regional radio system. Once the greater Kern County area project is completed, then an officer would be able to have radio coverage pretty much throughout Kern County and maybe even bleed over into neighboring counties along those periphery. So the new radio system provides several enhancements over the existing system. One being digital offers greater bandwidth. They have more channels to talk on using less frequencies. They are able to do more because essentially their radio becomes a computer on a network. Rather than just speech, they could do data. We've got GPS functionality, things of that nature. So if an officer's in a foot pursuit, you can follow that officer because they have a radio that's got that GPS functionality. Also, currently, as we've talked about, there are limitations with the existing coverage. When the radio system that we have today was put in, there was no Northwest. That was just rural. So the city's grown out of that way over the last 20, 25 years. So radio coverage, at least on the receive site, we can get a signal out to the officers, but the signal coming back in could be spotty, depending on the area you're in. So we're looking to improve that until the new radio system goes on. So there are benefits to the new radio system moving forward that addressed a lot of these needs that have come up.
That really makes me appreciate the officers that are out there that have no communication with the home office. So they're better men and women than I am. I don't think I want to do that. Is there anything that the council can do to help accelerate these processes? One of the things that I've experienced since I joined the council is how slow things move in government. And, we're in an environment where things move very, very quickly in industry. And, if we need something done, we get it done, and we bang it out. And it just seems to be a very slow process. So is there anything that we can do to help accelerate these processes? Because besides the connection with the county thing, which seems like a little larger project than we originally bid off, but just this process of upgrading our current firefighter and police department radios has taken, I think we're 5 years now into this thing. And I'm just wanting to know what we can do to make this process faster.
Thank you, Councilmember Mayor. I don't have an answer for you per se. I would say that communication and partnership with Kern County has been running smoothly since the inception. The project, as I said, is finishing up its second year this year since the agreement was signed with Motorola. And we, again, hope to be up and running by mid to late 2027. So for replacing a radio system inside of 4 years at this size is pretty typical. So far, we've been working well with Motorola. There were some issues early on, but I believe we've worked through them now. We've worked through, again, detailing out the detailed design review. So I'm expecting now things to run rather smoothly, because now it's just a question of turning it over to Motorola and having the construction crews come out and build the sites, install the equipment, and get the system up and running. But rest assured, if there's something that I can have you do to help this move along, I will ask.
Fair enough, thank you. The last point I wanted to make, the last point I wanted to make was that the $27 million that we're talking about that's been being invested in the communication stuff, this all came from Measure N dollars, correct?
I believe the majority of it is about Mr. Clegg.
That's correct. I'm not aware of any other funds. There may
Okay.
be, but I don't think so. I think it's all Measure N.
Well, I think that's an important point that we need to make, is that, people question how we've spent Measure N dollars over the years. And even when I was on Measure N committee, I questioned it. But is this a good example of something that, you can't dress it up, drive it down the street, put a bow on it, but that absolutely needed to be done and certainly meets the criteria of the Measure N fund. So I think from my perspective, I'm glad to see it being utilized this way, and that we let the community know that that's a good use of our Measure N dollars. So thank you. I have no further questions, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Coleman. That's the last request to speak, so thank you, Mr. Pronovus. Thank you, technology team. And next, City Attorney with the smallest department.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Virginia Gennaro, your city attorney, and I will be presenting for you this afternoon the 2025-2026 city attorney budget. So historically, I like to start with this slide, primarily for our new council members as well as our listening audience. Again, just to reiterate that the city council does have two employees, the city manager as well as the city attorney. And all employees report to the city manager, other than those employees that report to the city attorney's office. And so for a little bit of a deeper dive into my office, you can see the organizational chart. It consists of the city attorney, an assistant city attorney, some deputy attorneys, there's 5, outside counsel, which we'll go into in just a little bit, an administrative assistant, you're aware of Mr. Cadrill, who does our closed sessions, a senior legal secretary, and 3 legal secretaries. A little bit more information about that, and the highlights really are in that bubble that you see. The assistant city attorney currently remains there in the complement, but unfunded, and will remain unfunded until you appoint a new city attorney sometime in the next, let's see, January 1, 2027. And I think that that's a very good marketing tool for you to have that available spot for the new city attorney. Not just as a marketing tool, but I think at that particular time, then that would be appropriate for the new city attorney to set the assistant city attorney salary along with the council and with HR, and not to have that salary antiquated or impacted by compaction. As you move down the list, there are within the complement 5 deputy city attorneys. One of those deputy city attorneys is housed in terms of money from the water department. That's Mr. Collum, who most of you know. I know Councilmember Smith is very familiar with Matt. The other 4 deputies are within, again, the complement. I have 2 of them right now, and there are 2 vacant positions. One has been vacant since October of last year, and we are actively recruiting. When you compare the city attorney's office, your city attorney's office, with others, as the city manager mentioned, there are the typical cities that we look to and we compare. All of those cities utilize outside counsel, some more than others. But you can see that we're pretty lean and mean. There's 4 there because again, the one Mr. Collum is under Water Resources. So those are the 4 that we currently have that are within general fund. So again, I think it's fair to say that we are lean and mean, more lean. I'm the only mean one. Outside counsel, again, you're very familiar with outside counsel. It's very unique here in the city of Bakersfield because we have a flat rate. Those are the 3 firms that we do business with, Clifford & Brown, across the street at the Bank of America building. They handle primarily all of your tort cases. Those are situations in which people slip and fall on our sidewalks, our auto accident cases. Civil rights cases are handled with Marta Rosen and Cohen. And then we also have a smaller contract with Dwayne Morris in San Francisco that they handle, again, on a flat rate, our water matters. And again, that fee with Dwayne Morris is also paid for under the Water Enterprise Fund. I thought you would find these next 2 slides somewhat interesting. This is a bar graph, obviously, that shows the tort litigation over the last 5 years. And you can see that it's gone up. It's ballooned. I really don't have a reason why it has increased over the last 5 years, but it has. And when you look at the next slide, the trials calendared within the last 5 years, you should have in your dais 2 pieces of paper. One is a goldenrod and one is a yellow sheet. If you look at the goldenrod shows you what our trial calendar was in 2020 and what it was in 2021, so 2 years. And we haven't done anything to change the font or anything like that. And as long as I have been city attorney, it's always been on 1 page. Well, when you look at the yellow page now that's in front of you, again, same font. If anything, it may be a little bit smaller. We are now on the 3rd page, and that is, again, only for 2 years. Don't really have an explanation as to why. We're still disposing of cases at the same speed, if not quicker, than we have been before. I used to say maybe it was a little bit of a COVID backlog. There may be a little bit of that, but frankly, I think that people are just more litigious than they used to be. We always knew that California and New York were 2 of the most highly litigated cases, or where you would see the most litigated cases, the 2 states in the United States. But Bakersfield is really catching up, unfortunately, to Northern and Southern California. And so when you look at the highlights over the last year, again, litigation has taken focus front and center. We have 104 active cases. 87 of those are here within state cases, your Superior Court across the street. But in-house, our deputies have done a wonderful job. They have actually disposed of 13 cases in-house without going to outside counsel. They've assisted with litigation pertaining to water law as well. We've done quite a few ordinances and resolutions for the council. I'm sure you're familiar with those. We've continued with the transition with the Bakersfield Land Trust. Also handled, again, your public records requests, your pitches, motions with the police department, quite a few ordinances with the code, cleanups, etc. And we also have represented the various commissions, miscellaneous fire, as well as police on some personnel hearings within the last year. Again, outside counsel continues to be not only productive, but incredibly successful. I know all of you know that from some of our closed session discussions. They have closed 3 cases at the federal level. 2 of those, Mick and Heather, went to trial on and received defense verdicts. In the state cases, we've closed 22 cases over the past year, 17 of those without any monies being paid by the taxpayer. And again, we are represented in San Francisco and Sacramento by Dwayne Morris at the CPUC, as well as the State Water Resources Control Board. This is the common denominator slide that we have been asked to put in, and as you can see, our budget has, according to the slide, gone from $2.6 million, which is down about 8.5%. I would point out to you, though, that the major reason for that is the decrease or the lack of funding for the assistant city attorney position and a little bit of a decrease in the operating for tort legal services. But I think it's important to note, and the city manager touched on this, that while this particular aspect of our budget shows a decrease, the outside counsel contracts they went up. And I think it's fair to say that they went up significantly. But the silver lining associated with that is that we have not had any judgments rendered against the city. The taxpayers have not paid any judgments. And at the end of the day, those contracts were approved by the council in late 2024, I believe in October, November of 2024. And they will carry you through and the community through June 30th of 2030. So you're very well protected for the next 5 years. And it certainly gives staff some level of assurance as to what that cost is going to be so that they can plan accordingly. In terms of our goals for next year, again, very similar to years before, we want to continue that very successful litigation posture. We do want to maintain our service to you as the mayor and the council, as well as department heads. I indicated here the charter review. I would tell you it's not so much the charter review, but it is the council direction to me currently that we again address the potential for an amendment to the charter dealing with an increase of council pay. I intend to come back to the council sometime in the summer and give you a recap of where we are on that issue and get some direction from a majority of you as to how you wish to proceed. I think it is critical to note that should we move forward in 2026 with an election on that topic, I had an eye-startling conversation with the city clerk today at lunch. It's going to cost you a minimum of $500,000, if not $600,000. And so again, I think you want to kind of keep that in mind as you go through this budget process, because if some of you are thinking that's where you want to go, it may be prudent to set some of that money aside this budget year. We will continue to handle appropriate matters in-house as we have been successful before, as indicated previously, and I will continue the recruitment for the 2 deputy city attorneys if possible. There are some candidates out there that I may be able to underfill as associates and bring them in and mentor them, and I hope to have that done by July of this year. And so with that, I am open to any questions.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Is it Councilmember Smith? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Gennaro.
You're welcome.
Always appreciate your work. I just want to reinforce something we talked about at our goals, and it's, our difficulty in keeping people in jail. And your assistance on that matter would be greatly appreciated. We've upped the police presence, we've upped our number of arrests, and we've definitely upped the amount of times we arrest the same person in the same day.
Right.
So if we can somehow find a path to correct that, what I believe injustice, your help would be greatly appreciated.
I share your concern, council member, and anything I can do in that regard, consider it done.
Thank you.
I don't see any other requests to speak. Thank you very much. And next we move on to finance. We'll be covering finance, police, and then fire. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members, mayor. Usually we are competing with the city attorney for brevity, but she was very verbose, so I'm going to beat her very easily this time. But so, as we've kind of talked about, we've had other meetings, but at the start of the meeting, we're going through some challenging times, probably budgetarily, the more challenging than we've had in recent memory. But with that being said, our budget for the finance department continues to fund this department to continue to do the good work that we have been doing in previous years to serve the community, to serve our fellow departments to get their important work done, while still being good stewards to our taxpayers with the taxpayer funds that we maintain. So before we go through these numbers, I did want to thank our finance department, the staff in our finance department, for the great work that they've done this year and the great work that we will continue to do in the upcoming fiscal year. And I also want to thank our assistant finance director, Tara Lovelace, for actually putting together many of these numbers, doing the lion's share of this work. And to provide her additional thanks, I'm actually going to ask her to provide the rest of this presentation. So I'm going to leave it to her.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Our mission statement, I think, really represents who we are as a department. We really see ourselves as a service department, not only to the community, but also to other departments within our organization. And Councilmember Gonzalez, Christian, you guys really said it earlier. It's our job to identify things that we think need to change within our organization and our community, and then propose solutions for those changes. But the job doesn't stop there. We have to evaluate those solutions that we put into place to make sure that we're getting the desired outcome that we wanted. Several years ago, the city being the 9th largest in the state, we didn't have a budget department. And it really was a shortfall for the organization the size of ours. And so we added a couple of positions and created the first budget division for the city of Bakersfield and housed that in the city manager's office. And as we really started looking at how well that team was working and functioning, they really spent more of their time working with our finance director than really within individuals within the city manager's office. The original thought was that since they would be working directly with department heads, CMO made the most sense, but operationally it didn't. So those positions have since been moved to the finance department. A couple years ago, we started the ERP project, and doing so, we knew that that project was going to need support, but also, again, to Councilmember Gonzalez, we've moved a lot from off-the-shelf software to cloud-based software. One of the nice things about that is when you buy something off the shelf, you get what you got, and it doesn't ever change, and that's kind of how our current ERP system was. When you buy something that is cloud-based, it's more so of an evergreen product. It grows as companies develop new things, as they utilize AI and different features. We get those new things delivered to us, but it takes a team to be able to continually update that software. And so that team was kind of dispersed throughout the organization, and we made a strategic decision this year to bring that team under one umbrella so that they could work more collaboratively. So for a department that's normally, pretty boring from a budgetary perspective, we moved 5 people into our department, and so that's where a vast majority of the changes that you see before you today. Looking at our personnel services, there's an increase of $820,000 there. The vast majority of that is from those 5 positions. Operationally, we actually had a decrease, and I'll get into that a little bit more underneath. For a small department, we have a complex funding source from 10 different divisions there. General fund, that $632,000 that you see there, $530,000 of that is from 4 of those 5 positions. The remaining 5th position is a PSVS position. We're going to sound like a broken record. Some of the increases, as Christian pointed out, that we just don't have control over. Our PERS rates, our internal service rates, those are what led to the additional increases that you see in our general fund. We were able to make some reductions in areas that we had control of. We had a couple of employees who were taking advantage of our continuing education program. Those individuals have since graduated, which is very exciting for them and us as a department that that program is successful. Moving on to general or PSVS. Of the $187,000 that you see there, $177,000 of that is that 5th position that was moved into our department. The remaining is from those uncontrollable items. TDF, trip local match. We do still have 2 positions that are partly allocated to the TRIP division, and even though that program is significantly wound down from where it used to be, there is still work being done on that project. So the amount that you see there is from the increases previously mentioned for the individuals allocated there. Wastewater and refuge. We have 1 individual in our accounts receivable division who is allocated 100% to those 2 enterprise funds, and that person is responsible for the accounts receivable billings for those entities. Unfortunately, we've seen turnover in this position. The person who was previously there was at a higher step, and we've since filled that position with somebody at a lower step. So even though rates and everything are increasing because of that step decrease, you're seeing a decrease there as well. The off-street parking, which is primarily our parking structure, we really dove into those numbers to analyze line by line to see if there was anywhere that we could make some reductions, and we were able to identify about $15,000 that was budgeted in an area that we just didn't see the expenses truly coming to fruition there. So a slight decrease in that area. Assessment districts is a closed program that the city used to offer, and so those districts are continuing to age. And as we pay off those debts, we no longer need to budget for those closed districts. So that is the reason why you see the reduction almost in half on the assessment districts. And then same thing with the successor agency. That's also a closed program. We had continuously budgeted about $85,000 year over year for expenses within the successor agency, but as that program continues to wind down, the expenses just didn't justify continuing to budget at that rate. So that's why you see the $70,000 reduction there. So that is really the breakdown of the $719,000 reduction. And I've actually never used this, so what button does this? The one I hit that didn't do it. There we go. The bubble that you see on the left-hand side, I've already touched pretty significantly on. Those are the budgetary changes and new proposals. Really, the increases are the same that we've seen across the board, and then the addition of the 5 positions. On the right-hand side, you'll see the new capital improvement projects and programs. We don't have any new projects proposed for the finance department. Quite frankly, our hands are still pretty full with the ERP project, and that will continue to be our primary focus going into the 26 budget cycle. We're going to fine-tune the financials piece of that ERP project by doing a health check on that system. And that's a very customary kind of second phase of an ERP project, to bring in another implementer to look over your configurations to see if there's anything that they would do differently. We do note some areas that we don't feel are working as efficiently as we think they could. And so we're hoping that this health check kind of takes it to that next level. We were able to do something similar this year, kind of by accident, with the budget module. The 25 budget was the first year that we went live using that module. And between that time frame and this time frame, we have made significant improvements there. And I think that we will continue to see improvements, both from the reporting perspective, once we build that out even further and bring the additional components live. We will still continue to focus on getting HCM to the finish line. That is our payroll and budget module portions of the project, and bring community development and utility billing online. And then lastly, just the personnel overview. We previously had 32 positions in our department, and with the additional 5, we'll now be at 37. 8 of those are in our financial administration division, 16 are in accounting and reporting, 10 are in treasury, and 3 are in purchasing. And that concludes finance's budget. I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lovelace. Mr. McKeegan, do you have any comments? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of remarks and then a question. Number one is, as I look at the funding sources, and it's clear to me that that you are charging different enterprise funds for the services rendered. When I compare that with the city attorney's budget, the city attorney is funded primarily through the general fund, with the exception of one city attorney, which is based out of the water department. So the other thing I observed is, as we look at the PSVS budget for this upcoming fiscal year, it's estimated to subsidize the general fund by $11.9 million in this upcoming year. And some people in the community are, raise a red flag and are concerned about that. They're wondering where these dollars are going. But if you kind of dig a little deeper and think about it, that means that we're preserving public safety positions, perhaps, that are funded primarily through the general fund, and avoiding cuts there. And it would be an awkward scenario where we were cutting general fund positions and still maintaining positions in PSVS. And so I wonder, when are we moving towards a full cost accounting system for the city to better track where our funding sources are, and how do we actually attribute some of these costs to various different departments? One other example is TRIP. A lot of in-kind support has been provided by the city manager's office, by the city attorney's office, by various other staff members, I'm sure. But TRIP hasn't really bared that cost for staff time to deliver those services, and yet they were real costs. And so can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I'll take just the first portion of that. I don't think we're all that different from city attorney's office, where we have staff that are fully dedicated 100% to whatever those operations are, same as the attorney that's with the water department.
see. Okay.
We do charge them directly for those services. The rest of the servers or positions within the department are really considered support. You can't really pinpoint where those kind of dollars are going. Accounts payable, for example, unless we want to start getting down to how many invoices are being paid for each department and allocating resources that way, then it's really just a general support in that way. But if it's 100% specifically dedicated, then we do try to charge it to the program which is appropriate for the work that they're doing. And then I'll let Randy speak to the other.
Thanks, sir. So, yeah, the standard approach previously has been to, if we can identify services that are provided to a specific department, whether it be the city attorney or the TDF for TRIP funds or utility charges, we would, in essence, allocate that individual position to that fund. We are working towards and moving towards a more full costing method, as you have pointed out. So we are looking at what would be a citywide cost allocation plan. So what we would do is we would take the cost of support services and then build a plan and a methodology to allocate those costs to really basically capture the cost of providing those services to all of the departments that are outside servicing departments. So that is something that has not been done in the city since I've been here, but it is a plan that we have to really build a better picture of what the cost of services are to those outward-facing departments.
That's great, and it's a best practice, it should be noted, among cities throughout the country, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most large cities have something like that.
So what's the timeline of making this transition? How do we look at that? And I know you have a big task right now with the ERP.
It is the plan. We saw the need. I've seen the need since even becoming the finance director. But right now we're focusing on the ERP and getting that implemented. So my view of it is post 2026. Maybe by the end of 2026 we'll be ready to start that process. Maybe mid 2026. But really we got to get the ERP, the HCM stuff done, and then we could really focus in on what would be a citywide cost allocation plan.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to bring up the single audit problems that we've had in the last couple of years and kind of put an explanation point on that I hope that gets turned in on time.
Absolutely.
Don't like to be on the bad boy list and
Don't like it either.
Have our federal funds at risk and that kind of stuff. So just wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah, for sure. Just as some background, the issue with our financial reporting is directly related to our ERP system. So we are working through the challenges of getting the financial system up and running. There were some issues specifically related to fixed assets, year-end close, that had prevented us from properly closing the fiscal year. And so we're working through that, and we do have a plan to issue draft financials by the end of this fiscal year for last year, and so that we can get that single audit done in a timely fashion. So we recognize it. We're moving forward with the right plan and right options with our staff, and that's one of our main focus. I talked about, the citywide cost allocation. We got to get our financial statements closed in a proper time frame so that we can meet the requirements of the single audit and in other regulatory bodies as well, specifically things like our bond ratings.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests. Thank you, Mr. McKeegan, Ms. Lovelace, and let's take a short break and be back here at 1:35. All right, reconvening at 1:35. Now we have the privilege of having our police department.
I just want to tell you it's Randy's birthday today. So
It's Randy's birthday. You mean the finance director? Oh, you know what? He's giving everybody an extra 5% to do whatever you want on his birthday.
Happy birthday. Now you can't leave.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Randy. Happy birthday to you. Chief Terry, how do you follow that? You'll be singing
I'm done.
to us.
I don't know. I don't know. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. Chief Greg Terry, I'm here with my very capable staff, Assistant Chiefs Jeremy Blakemore, Jeff Burdick, and our fiscal manager, Ariam Isaac. It's my pleasure to present the proposed budget of the police department for next year. First, I'll provide kind of an overview of some crime trends over the last year, 2024, and then present the details of our budget and a single CIP project for the next coming year. Our mission remains clear, and that is to partner with our community to protect lives and property. And we purpose to have this mission guide the decisions that we make, from resource allocation to how we respond to emerging public safety issues. Reported crime across the city declined in 2024, and that progress kind of reflects really multiple contributing factors in my view. First and foremost, I do believe that the police department's focused enforcement, data-informed deployment strategies, and community partnerships have helped reduce crime in meaningful ways. In the second sort of element of this factor here in the reductions is 2024 was our first full year of transitioning using NIBRS reporting to the federal government, crime away from what we had used for decades in the Uniform Crime Reporting System. And over the last year, during the year of 2024, we found that we had over-reported some crime in 2023, particularly in the areas of aggravated assault, sexual assault as well. So some of the redactions that you're seeing in some of those areas across both categories of crime do reflect some correction taking place. We have affirmed our reporting structure, and we have a strong foundation to ensure that what we are reporting to the federal government is accurate. I think the third element there is kind of always there, and that really is how the public or how the community reports crime. We know that that many of them oftentimes are underreported. And so those are all kind of factors in my view as I assess the reported crime over the last year. I think it's also, though, consistent with what we are seeing sort of nationally in trends of violent crime and even some property crime across the country. Many of the cities, even in cities our size, are seeing some declines. And so all of those are kind of my assessment as what might be involved in contributing to the decrease. Grateful for it, though. but there are some other factors there I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. The next slide is really, the next two slides are a crime rate. The first one is the violent crime rate with some comparisons to some of other cities. Certainly the safety and security of our residents is our top priority. And we have seen the violent crime rate decline over the last couple of years, including last year. We continue to remain focused on reducing harm and enhancing safety through sustained proactive strategies. Our officers and detectives are really using a variety of evidence-based procedures, hotspot policing, data-driven informant deployment, focused deterrence, and partnerships across the city that are really focused on violent and property crime. But in these two slides, again, the crime rate is a way for us to do an accurate comparison to other cities our size and be able to look at how much crime is occurring or how much crime is being reported in these two categories across our city. And it's a way for us, to, again, to also measure kind of crime trends over extended periods of time. This is the property crime rate for Bakersfield in comparison to the other 4 cities in the Central Valley there. And again, just kind of an easy and an accurate way to do comparisons to help us understand where we stand across or comparison to some other California cities. And I think it's a practical and an appropriate way also to demonstrate transparency to the public, so that the public has an understanding of how much crime is being reported and how we are performing and shake out in comparison to some other cities. Response times. Response times are certainly one of the key performance indicators of the police department, certainly the most visible signs to our community and how effective we are. We understand that when somebody calls for help, they expect us to come, and they expect us to come quickly and provide professional service and handle the situation thoroughly. We continue to make some progress in the highest priority crime, priority 1, which is where life and safety is at imminent or immediate risk. But you can also see that we still have improvements to make in priority 2 and priority 3, where police delays certainly can impact public safety and people's feeling of safety and actual real injuries, as well as apprehending people responsible for crime. Our 911 answer time improved. It was the first year that we actually met one of the national standards that we've been trying to attain, and that is that you should answer 95% of your 911 calls in under 20 seconds. And so last year was the first year that we had been able to attain that rate, being able to answer just over 95% of the calls within 20 seconds. Homicides. Homicides certainly represent a loss to our community. The loss of any life, regardless of the circumstances, is a loss for our entire community. And while the number of homicides has significantly declined over the last few years, we remain deeply committed to prevention, resolution, and supporting the victims' families. One key factor behind the reductions, particularly in homicides over the last several years, has been our focused deterrent strategy. This approach brings together law enforcement, community leaders, stakeholders, credible messengers that go out into the street to really disrupt what was going on. They make actual contact and provide an offer of services and deliver messages to those that are involved in crimes of violence, particularly gun and gang violence. They make contact with those that have been recent victims of gun and gang violence and try to work with them to de-escalate, help them not to retaliate. And then we also, part of this work is to go out and engage those that are likely to commit a crime of gun or gang violence and try to intervene and work with them directly. And a message is being delivered that there's a lot of resources that are available to them if they want to exit this kind of life and activity, but if they continue or choose to continue to engage in this, that there will be consequences to that, but that we are sort of offering them services. Again, the community-based organizations that are partnered with us in this effort are just excellent at going out. They're connected to the community. They're credible messengers, and they're able to deliver the offer of services and consequences in a respectful and meaningful way to many of these individuals. And it is really that collective work that I attribute much of the decline in gun and gang violence to specifically. We also have great detectives who are hard at work and officers, and as you can see, we've maintained a significantly high homicide clearance rate over the last several years as well. And again, this is a direct reflection on the work of our officers, our detectives, our crime scene techs, the community as well, because the community is a significant source of information for us in our work with the district attorney's office as well. Organized retail theft declined last year. Been working hard, obviously, over the last several years in particular. I don't think that this is accidental progress. It's the work of a clear strategy that we've tried to develop that is focusing on prevention, accountability, and collaboration. Again, partnerships. We have about 70 local retailers that we meet with every month. The organized retail theft meetings is what we host. There's about 70 retailers that are represented in this group, and we share information. We hear from them trends. They're always sharing information about chronic thieves, pictures and surveillance information, all kinds of other intelligence. But specifically over the last couple of years as well, the police department, we have a detective detail that is dedicated to focusing on retail theft. Like I said, we've engaged many of our retail partners. We're using technology, flock cameras, surveillance camera trailers that have really contributed to our ability to catch those that are serial thieves and chronically committing some of the offenses here locally. We're also working with statewide agencies as well, including the CHP and their statewide organized retail theft task force. And collectively, I think we are seeing some changes here. I continue to encourage many of our local business owners to partner with us. Nearly every retailer that has come to these meetings or began to become engaged with us has seen success. There is true success in partnerships because we, one, the offenses, the issues are being reported to us, and collectively we can work together on them, and we are seeing some successes. So I continue to encourage all retailers to connect with us and partner with us in this effort because we can make a difference. Mental health, nearly 7 out of 10 calls for service to the police department every single day involve some sort of mental health issue as of late. And so we've tried to find ways to make the most efficient and effective use of police resources, ensuring that those that are in crisis get the help that they need, but that also we are preserving important police resources for emergencies that police are suited for. And so what this information displays here is really a look at how many of the calls annually are being handled by a mental health clinician and how many result in a police response. So when a call comes in and somebody is in crisis, very often the 911 call or call for service, if it's not 911, will get transferred to the mental health clinician. And they were able to triage that, work through their resources that they have available to them. And if the nature of the call and the circumstances need a police response, they'll refer that call back to the police department, back to the dispatcher who will send an officer. But as you can see, 8 out of 10 times, or just over 80% over the last 3 years, this clinician has been able to handle the call without a police response. We currently have 3 clinicians that are working in the comm center. They work 7 days a week, and they cover between 12 to 14, 16 hours of the day. But we don't have full coverage or availability of those services 24 hours a day. Fatal collisions have declined again last year, thankfully, over the previous 2 years. So we are seeing some progress there. Obviously, traffic safety is something that we're all concerned about. The police department, through the growth of PSVS and the building back of our motor unit, certainly enforcement is part of our strategy to reduce high-risk driving, speeding, running lights, violations at intersections, those kinds of things. Education is a part of it. We have a variety of community programs that the police department is involved in presenting to the public. Our motor officers also use many of their stops as moments of education, whether they issue a citation or not. And then we've been working with Public Works as well, trying to share information and understanding what is happening in our roadways so that the police department can appropriately respond to the areas that are sort of our responsibility. One slide here will have a sort of a summary of our police department positions. This is the current staffing of the police department as of the preparing of this presentation. We have 38 vacancies. We have a fill rate of about 93%. So we're doing pretty well. I think we're probably in line with most agencies across the state, about a 90, just over 90% fill rate. 90% of our professional staff positions are filled. Over the last 5 years, or since PSVS, we've hired nearly 350 officers and put on 10 different academies. Our current academy, which has 20 recruits in it, will graduate in June. That 38 vacancy position is counting those 20 recruits. So we still have 38 additional ones on top of the recruits that are in the academy. And then our next academy will start again at the end of this month, or at the end of June. And we anticipate between 30 and 35 to be in that academy. So now I'll look forward into next fiscal year. The police department is not expanding any of our programs or services. What you will see here is really a reflection of a flat budget other than those areas where we have no discretion. And these are increases that we are legally or contractually have to meet, and so the cost is going up. The overall increase of the budget is just under 7%, with the vast majority of that obviously there in the increase in salaries and benefits related to workers' comps and PERS rates as well. The other significant increases are really attributed to internal vehicle and technology service rates, animal shelter, and risk and liability rates as well. So the total expenditures within the police department will increase, again, just under 7%. The police department is still continuing to use a lot of grants, particularly for our traffic enforcement, and it enables us to do checkpoints and overtime for DUI patrols and a variety of things. The investigations divisions frequently uses grants as well for shoulder tap operations involving alcohol and the purchase at local retailers. And the police department also uses a grant. It's called SLESF. It's represented there in a funding source. It is supplemental law enforcement funding that comes from the state, and we use a lot of that for our critical training and equipment within the police department. So that is why that is reflected there. But that also really is a grant fund. And so it will be important in the future years as we have the ability to do that, to migrate some of these very critical expenditures for the police department back into the general fund. But we're grateful for this funding. We've had it now for many, many years. It is, in my view, quite stable, but it is funding from the state. We have one CIP request this year, and that is to mitigate some flooding that occurs when we have heavy rainfall at police headquarters. At the east and west ends of the building, there are entrances below the roadway that collect water and needs to be mitigated. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Congratulations, and thank you for the positive outcomes. You mentioned some anomalies in the crime and traffic safety update. There are downward trends, positive trends in some of the other areas. Are there any anomalies that we should note that would contribute to the downward trend, or is that just good policing?
Well, like I said, for me, it was kind of those three factors that we know to be involved in it. We are certainly seeing some real success around what we were doing with gun and gang violence. You saw it reflected in the homicides. It is also involved in non-fatal shootings. Non-fatal shootings are down as well, significantly, and gun and gang-related shootings in particular. And so there's some real signs of real progress there the work that we're doing around organized retail theft, we are seeing some decreases in theft. You saw the overall number of reported thefts occur last year. Now, those include both felony and misdemeanor. What flipped last year is we're seeing a higher number of felony crimes in that organized retail theft number. And some of that is directly related to the staffing that we've been able to, having a dedicated team that is working more closely with these retailers. And we're tracking these cases down because so people will go to one establishment and steal, and then we're able to put these cases together and file multiple cases against some of these individuals. And so there's a lot of that kind of work that is reflective in these positive stats. Yes, there was a correction taking place as well, but it is also, I think, very meaningful work through partnerships, through evidence-based strategies, and we're continuing to work to do that. One of them we did just a few months ago. We did sort of a staff walk out on Union Avenue, and one of the strategies that we're now we'll be working hard to implement more fully is really looking at place-based policing strategies where we're taking a closer look at where crime is occurring, why is it clustering there, what are some of those things going on in the environment and sort of the backdrop that may not be directly, may not be obvious or even a police responsibility, but collectively we can focus resources on those areas and begin reducing crimes and calls for service. And so I think it is a reflection of many of the things that the police department is doing. The partnerships that we've built with the police department absolutely are reflected in the decline in some of those crime stats.
Thank you, Chief. With mental health, you mentioned there is 12 to 16 hours a day of coverage, and so you're not covered during the other times. How do you deal with that, and what would be the benefit of covering more?
When that clinician is not available, then very often it resorts to a police response. We also, in addition to, I didn't talk about this today, but in addition to the clinicians in the comm center, we also have co-response teams with behavioral health as well that are out in the field, primarily working with our impact team. And so you have an officer and a clinician riding together, going out and handling calls for service. So in the event a mental health crisis call comes in, the clinician is not available, it will kind of go to one of the co-response teams in the field if they're available. And if not, last resort, it would go to a MET team that, again, is out there and available resource in the community. But very often, if those kinds of resources aren't available, it absolutely would result in a police officer response.
Well, it's very impressive to see the quantity that can be handled by our clinician.
Yeah, it has been and the council supported this in a pilot project about 3 years ago, and we didn't know what it was going to be like, but it's turned out to be very successful.
So not only does it save our officers time, but I'm going to guess the outcome for the patient or the person who's going through the crisis is going to be better also. So very
Absolutely.
positive.
It's the right help for them in those moments. Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chief, for the presentation today, and thank you to your command staff and to the whole department for all the work that you do to protect and serve our community. And thank you so much for all the great work that you've done post-PSVS in the recruitment of new officers and, of course, of the academies. And I just want to give also a shout out to the Human Resources Department, who really have done the yeoman's work of that recruitment on the back end, the processing of the applications, and working side by side with your department throughout the last few years. We've had 10 academies. That's incredible. How many academies were we having prior to PSVS?
It was about one a year.
1 a year.
But the structure was different. We didn't have our own academy site either, and so we were sharing space with the sheriff's office at their regional training academy. And so you're right in pointing out human resources. The vast majority of police recruitments fall on them. We certainly have teams that are available to it, but we would not have made the progress without their support, certainly, but really their progressive pursuit of different kinds of strategies that are out there and helping us test them.
Right, and I've just been super impressed with the recruitment efforts, the strategies, and all of that work. And then also just underneath it all, the fact that we now have our own training facility that we built up as a city through all of this work of recruiting and processing applications. That's incredible. But I keep my own little scorecard here. In 2018, we had 385 officers, positions filled. Today we have 474. We're very close, 9 officers away from that 100 officer net gain since pre-2018.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And that 100 number, kind of depends on where you started and what you're using. And so it's been done in a variety of different ways because that very first year of PSVS, the complement of the police department was increased as well. But in a technical sense, you're very close to being accurate. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I was thinking it was 389, to be honest with you. But in any event, yes, we are.
Well, I just like to do what we say we're going to do. And we made a promise and commitment to the community, and we're moving very quickly through that, towards that goal, even through a global pandemic and all these other challenges that we're facing, and not to mention your work with the DOJ and all of this other stuff that's happening in the background that we don't always see, and certainly the community doesn't see or appreciate enough. So again, kudos to you and your team, and whatever that number is for 100 net gain, I'm buying a huge cake the day that we make that that goal. So great. Question regarding the response times. I'm super excited and very pleased that we are seeing a reduction, primarily in those priority 1 calls. My question, though, is regarding the different zones, and if we're seeing response time reductions in all zones, and if not, what are some of those disparities?
Yeah, this is across the city. Thank you for that question. This is a response time across the city. Metro zone, where we have some of the highest calls for service in terms of volume as well as violence. Our response time is lower than this. And then in some areas of the city, you get into the north and the valley and the sort of the south end of town, you can see those response times increase. I don't have them off the top of my head, so I apologize for that. But it is this number is not reflective of all of the police zones.
No, I appreciate that. And if we can receive a report on the various different zones and how that compares, I'd appreciate that. My next question is regarding insurance rates. Many of the areas that I represent aren't just residential, a lot of commercial business districts, downtown, Old Town Kern. Many of those businesses have seen their insurance premiums skyrocket based on the risk exposure with an increase in crime. In fact, one business reported to me recently that their crime zone score, if you will, went up from a 9 to a 10, which is the highest amount. That was actually in Old Town Kern. That resulted in an increase in their premium of $21,000. Chief, are you familiar with this scorecard that is established by the insurance industry? And I'm wondering if we can also include that as a metric of how we're doing to reduce crime in our city and how we're measuring our effectiveness. I do understand, though, that metric is delayed a few years, and so it may not be reflective on all the good work that we've seen over the last year or two, but still, nonetheless, this is a real impact to many of the businesses that I represent. That's a real cost to them, and so can you please respond?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm not familiar with that particular scorecard. I've seen a variety of groups that sort of periodically send out. It can be real estate related or insurance related. There's a variety of things, even traffic safety, pedestrian safety. There's a variety of groups that publish sort of scorecards across cities and different things like that. Yeah, very often those are delayed for a period of time, and so they're not current. I'm not familiar with this particular one that you're speaking of, but to the issue that you're talking about, I am aware of it because I've had business owners tell me that they've experienced this with their insurance rates going up. They've also told me that they've stopped reporting because of this, or the threat of this even. And so there's some gaps there that are occurring as a direct result of either the volume of of crime that they've been experiencing, but the impact of their insurance rates that they've actually stopped reporting. And so I'm aware of that, and which is why we've done a lot around to try to help the commercial establishments through the deployment of private security, the assignment of the impact team, the assignment of community relations, having dedicated people for business owners in the downtown area, the whole, really, the concept of the community vitality and the coordination of all of these resources to be responsive and to be where the community is experiencing harm in the best way, and try to focus on those that are committing this kind of harm. All of that really speaks to the city as a whole, and certainly the police department strategy trying to address the need and support of our commercial centers. And so I'm aware of the issue that you're talking about, rates going up, but again, I'm also aware because of that some business owners have told me that they've stopped reporting as well.
Yeah, that's really concerning. I'm going to switch gears real quick and just say I appreciate all of the work related to mental health partnerships. That differentiated response is appropriate. I think it speaks to the diversity and needs in a growing community. And so I think that was a really important move on behalf of the department and the city, and I appreciate all the work there and any other enhancements we can make to address issues in some of our subpopulations of people who require additional supports and responses that don't necessarily involve law enforcement. I think that's an important piece. The other thing I really wanted to say is I want to just give a big thank you to our impact team. They work very, very hard in an area that is very difficult and requires a lot of sensitivity, requires a lot of additional support, but also is just never ending as it relates to our homelessness crisis in the community. And I just appreciate all those who are part of that team, who wake up every morning and get to work, and who've, I believe many of whom have chosen to be part of this team. And so I really appreciate that. I do want to ask though, you mentioned earlier Union Avenue, and I was with you on that walk, and I thought that was very, very good. And I do think that there are good questions that need to be answered in terms of why do certain people cluster in certain areas? What is the environment? What is the environmental design or the built infrastructure that contributes to that? And maybe those answers lead us down a path that don't have much to do with law enforcement. Maybe it has to do with infrastructure, perhaps additional street lighting. That seems to be the most obvious one. But my question really is, as we look at homelessness, how are we thinking about this differently with all of the years now of our work with the impact team? How are we thinking about this work to really resolve some of the chronic challenges in key areas of town? I'm thinking Baker Street, King Street, 24th Street, California. How is the department thinking about the next iteration of our work as it relates to impact?
I share your admiration and appreciation for the impact team as well. They are dedicated, and that's the right way to describe them, to this work. They are professionals. They've developed a high level of expertise in this particular area, dealing with a very sensitive population, both on the business side and those that are out in the streets as well. And so I will pass on your appreciation for their work as well. The police department's responsibilities lie in a variety of areas here. But what we can't get to is sort of the fundamental, foundational root cause issues. Those are things that the police department can't touch. And so we are collectively working with our other community partners, making services available, certainly having enforcement when it's necessary. The mental health partnerships are a key part of that. Moving people, having resources available for people to go into the shelters. All of those are critical things for us to be able to do. But it very often feels like, from the police department side, because we can't deal with root causes or impact them from the police department's perspective, it feels like we are kind of whack-a-mole and moving people around and not resolving the issue for the individual, or certainly for the businesses and sort of that community safety feeling that our community is experiencing. And so looking forward, we're continuing to look at how we do this, whether it's in the nature of the contacts, what we're talking about. Are there some other resources that are available that we're not utilizing? Are there some other tools or strategies in terms of the conversations and the way that we deliver services? We've even modified it this year where very often from community vitality, a service provider will go first to make that initial contact and try to get people to accept services. We know that so many of them are resistant, and it takes multiple contacts before they ever do that. And so it's difficult for me to answer your question directly because the police department's responsibility only goes so far, and yet we're very often and have been kind of the safety net for so many of these areas because there's nobody else to respond. And so I would tell you, my answer is we're looking constantly at ways for us to improve what we're doing, other people to partner with, the way that we're delivering the services, and certainly working together collectively trying to find the resources, whether it's jail beds, whether it's hospital beds. I mean, those are things we're actively pursuing. We're increasing our partnership with Kern Health Systems as an example of how can we partner so that they're in the community and we are collectively where we need to be. I've just recently discussed with them sort of the people that are recently released from incarceration, where they're getting dropped off. One of the things that we're looking at is being able to have a good partnership at that point of contact so that they have services available to them right away. That's not something that we're doing. We're looking at where do we need to move where these locations are because it is causing things to cluster. Mm-hmm. So those are two examples of things that we're continuing to try to figure out, okay, how do we continue to fine tune and meet the expectations of the community.
I love that, and I appreciate that spirit, and I think that was really what I was trying to get at in hoping to hear that you continue to fine tune, because I do think there's been a lot of success.
Yes.
I think with BLNC and with a lot of the support providers, we've seen a reduction in the number of people who are on our streets. I know I live in downtown. Anecdotally, over the years, I've seen and experienced a reduction of the number of people who are on our streets. But even still, the work continues. The challenge is still there. The problem's still there. And I think that it does require a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of creative thinking in terms of how we can get to that population that still remains on our streets. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your work. A lot of great stuff here. I wanted to emphasize the mental health numbers. Over 3 years, 82% of the calls been taken by the clinician. So prior to that and prior to PSVS, those were all taken by sworn officers.
The call would be coming into our communications center, and then an officer would be dispatched, yes, to handle that event.
So that was enormous amount of time that sworn officers spent on those items that they now do not spend on.
That's correct. And over the last couple of years in particular, we've sort of, and we kind of talk about it this way, getting officers, the task for officers, having that focus be what only they can do. If there's other options, our professional staff within the police department have grown in a variety of different ways because much of that work was being done by an officer and it doesn't require it to be. And there's a lot of reasons that you wouldn't want an officer in that kind of position. But no, that is what our focus is trying to preserve the police resources for the true not true emergencies, those are emergencies as well, but emergencies that only police officers can handle and need to be at.
I appreciate that. And I think there was a lot of other areas prior to PSVS where you had sworn officers doing work that now is handled by civilians. Do we have that number since PSVS? How many civilians are now handling work that was sworn officer work?
We don't have it in that. I certainly have the number of professional staff and how that's grown and where they've grown, and that would be the pointer there. But just some, our fleet, our facilities, all of that, those logistics, kind of the everyday was being handled by police officers, and now it's completely civilian staff.
That's such an important number to me because when we talk about having an additional 100 sworn officers, we've got more than 100 sworn officers actually doing police officer work at this time because we have all those civilians doing the work that the sworn officers were doing. True statement?
We have certainly gained back into the sworn workforce as a result of those new positions, yes. But I haven't counted the number exactly to your point of the question.
Great. If we could have that, I appreciate it. And then I just wanted to also accentuate that, great, crime is down, and also fatal collisions are down, and, good work on both of those areas. And I think, somehow we in society accept a violent death by traffic collision more than we accept violent death by a gun. And so I think it's important that we continue that work, and that's also
Life is
great work.
precious.
Absolutely.
Every life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Thank you, Chief and BPD team. And now we get the privilege of having our fire department. Congratulations on a very successful open house on Saturday. Duke certainly was a big hit.
Thank you for attending.
Pleasure.
Good afternoon, Mayor Go, council members. I'm Kevin Albertson, your interim fire chief for your fire department. With me, I have Deputy Chief Paul Briones, our fiscal manager, Jose Rivera, and our admin analyst, Cheyenne Lowe. I have the pleasure of presenting the 25-26 proposed budget for the fire department. Before we get started on that, I would really like to talk about our mission. The mission of the Bakersfield Fire Department is to protect, engage, and inspire a safe community through all hazard response and community risk reduction while delivering legendary customer service. This is something we take serious. This is something that us as a chief staff and our company officers and chief officers really relay down to every single firefighter and our support staff on how important it is to serve the community and provide that legendary customer service. With that, our proposed budget for 25-26 is $70.4 million. You'll see a $3.6 million increase, roughly 5.45%. A lot of the increase we're seeing in those expenditures in our budget are mainly internal rates, salaries and benefits, and internal rates like fleet, insurance, and then some utilities. Budget changes and new proposals. You'll see in our budget changes, we are right-siding our utilities, electric utilities account, and adding an additional $302,000. Over the past couple years, we have not adjusted those, and we've seen a shortfall. And this is just a right-siding of that as far as tracking it appropriately and forecasting appropriately. General fund internal service fees increased by $1 million roughly, an increase in PSVS salaries and benefits, and also internal fees. We are also requesting an additional $36,000 for equipment, firefighting foam, and paramedic supplies. With the prevalence of lithium-ion and battery-powered devices, we are seeing some small fires, and not as many here in Bakersfield as other jurisdictions, but I do expect that to grow. The firefighting foam increase is especially for electric and battery-powered fires. The department is also proposing some capital improvement projects, and these projects are critical projects that we brought just for this fiscal year. The proposal of a partial roof replacement for fire station number 3 to prevent further water damage. Plumbing projects at station 4 and 11. These plumbing projects are related to in-ground sewer, one where there's a fracture, another one where there's an occlusion in the sewer line. And then generator repairs at fire station number 2 and station 4. Currently, those generators are not operable because of a transfer switch. And once we get that transfer switch fixed, they'll be back in service and ready to work. We are requesting some small personnel additions. We're requesting one proposed fire prevention inspector. This is based out of the Coupa funding and will be fee supported. The inspector takes about 6 months to train. After that 6 months, the inspections that this inspector will be providing will fund that source. And primarily the inspections that we're going to see this inspector doing are state mandated inspections on our educational institutional facilities and R1 and R2 residents that the state requires us to do, and also report back to them, as well as some of our high-rise structures. But as far as our fire department accomplishments, we have a lot of fire department accomplishments over the last year. These are just some of the highlights that we wanted to make recognized: the completion of the Bakersfield Fire Department annual report, the open house. This one was actually last year. We had one this weekend that we anticipated around 800 to 1,000 people that attended to it. Great turnout, wonderful interaction with the community, and really appreciated the support from all of our other city departments also. We implemented a new reporting system, which is Image Trend, which is consistent with the rest of Kern County. It also provides some very vital data analytics that we're able to pull out of it once we start getting data into that system. We deployed an ALS, Advanced Life Support Rescue, to Station 1. We graduated 9 new firefighters from Academy, and we're set to graduate 11 more here this summer. Your Bakersfield Fire Department is committed to mutual aid response and helping out other communities in need. This last year, we deployed our USAR team to the Palisades fire, and we also deployed to multiple other fires throughout the western United States. The Eaton fire, also in January. Last fire season, we were in California, Idaho, Washington. All those are crucial deployments to help out other communities. We would receive the same service if we needed that from those departments. We implemented fire service fees, and then of course we had some great capital improvement projects where some of the highlights were remodeling a kitchen at Fire Station 1 and Fire Station 9. With that being said, I would love to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. I remember over the years, the vacant buildings have been, I believe, the #1 problem. And we've had great success in demolishing a number of those. Is that number coming down, and are we seeing success there?
So that number is slightly coming down. We are seeing it level off some. Last year, our Fire Investigations Division did about 720 investigations. 510 of those were incendiary fires, so that means they were intentionally set. That number is slightly up from the previous year. What we have started to do is we've taken our Fire Investigations Division and we're having them focus on outside fires in certain areas. The downtown area, areas around Union. As we all know, all those fires start as small fires, and some of them start on the exterior of the structure and then spread into the structure. So we've had our fire investigations start to essentially do some patrolling, similar to what law enforcement do or police officers do. And that's not something that our investigators have done in the past. So we're having them do essentially some patrolling and look for some of our hotspot areas and try to target people starting outside fires and doing arson enforcement. One crucial thing that we have noticed is the crime of arson carries a little more weight than some of the other crimes when we start talking about prosecuting and the district attorney. So our fire investigations works really closely with law enforcement and PD to incorporate, if it's possible, to incorporate that arson crime in with any other charges that they have. And we have a much higher likelihood of keeping that person incarcerated for a little bit longer.
Thank you. And the other question I had, you said we had implemented the fire service fee, and I know we talked about that for many years. Is that success? Are we getting pushback, or where are we at?
Thank you for the question. Last October, we implemented the fire service fees. And our fire service fees, just to give you a breakdown on our fire service fees, our fire service fees are fees that are really charged to our insurance companies. No community member should receive a fee. As a matter of fact, we did have one receive a fee, an invoice accidentally. We cleared it up very quickly. And that's something that we have an outside partner organization that does the billing for us. They do the collection, and then essentially we receive a check every month. It has been something that has been building. Primarily, the things that we charge for are vehicle accidents and some of our fires. The last check we received was $15,000, and that was 1 month worth of incidents. We do expect that to slowly grow and get further and further. We are looking at potentially some other fees out there that we can potentially charge on top of that. But the fire service fees have been very successful, and I anticipate the amount of money we're collecting to slowly grow over the years.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate the presence that the fire department always has in the community. I think
I appreciate that.
positive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Coleman.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Councilmember Smith had kind of asked the question I was going to ask, and I was really trying to cancel it, but I couldn't figure out how to cancel my request.
You stole your thunder?
Save time.
But thank you for your guys' service. We really appreciate the service the fire department does.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Thank you to the department for all the great work. I heard the open house was wonderful. I had a funeral to attend, otherwise I would have been there. My question really is regarding the number of fires that we've seen in downtown and in really central Bakersfield over the last few years. We've experienced far too many, especially in vacant buildings, which is why I've been such a huge advocate pushing forward our vacant structure ordinance and registry and pushing to have the city council adopt enhanced requirements for that registry. But I also understand that arson investigators are positions that are really critical to the department to actually investigate these situations. You mentioned patrolling, but I understand staffing is limited, and in a growing city, really ought to invest in this particular area. Can you talk to us about this? I had made a referral a while back regarding arson investigators and looking at ways in which we can fund additional positions in this fiscal year.
Yeah, certainly. Over the past many years, 20, 25 years, the number of fires have increased about 500% here in Bakersfield. I mentioned earlier, last year we had 710 investigated fires, 720 investigated fires, 510 of those were intentionally set. We currently have 3 fire investigator captains and 1 battalion chief. And most of the captains do the investigations. Investigations can be significant, especially on some of our big fires downtown. They can take days. I do remember your referral. I do share your concern. With the current budget as it was, we did talk about adding some additional fire investigators. But decided to hold off because of the budget constraints that we currently have with the city. We are continuing to do some of the outside fire sweeps to make sure that we can have an impact as much as we can with those. And we have seen some results with those. I would like to see some more results, and we will continue to pursue that, those types of efforts. Yeah, we're currently at the 3 captains and the 1 battalion chief.
So-
And if I may, Councilor,
Yeah,
just in
please.
fairness to Chief Albertson, the fire department did propose 2 additional arson investigators in response to the referral. We've had a lot of conversation back and forth about how we could potentially fit that in, just given the budget challenge where we're at. We had to make reductions to come to a balanced budget. We haven't proposed any new positions in either PSVS or the general fund, just as a sort of a matter of course. But as council looks at and considers the different trade-offs in the budget process, we did look at one spot in development services fund. We looked at this one position for the Coupa fund. We recognize some of those areas of highest priority of the council, like the ease of the permitting process and public safety, might be areas where there'll be some discussion. So that was at the top of the list of things that we just didn't feel like we had the funding to be able to accommodate additional positions. But again, will be I think a conversation for council.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. Chief, as it relates to arson investigators, how has the staffing changed over the last 10 years?
We did add 1 battalion chief with PSVS.
Okay.
If we look back onto a history of the Bakersfield Fire Department, going back to like when I was hired back in 2000 or just before that,
Okay.
we actually had more investigators.
How many do we have then?
I believe we had, off the top of my head, 6. I would have to do some research just to confirm it, but it is either 5 or 6.
So we have fewer arson investigators than we did in 2000, but the number of fires have gone up 500% plus. Seems like we should prioritize additional arson investigators. So I'm going to make a referral tonight that staff identify some areas where we can perhaps make some trade-offs to add those additional positions for the council's consideration when we adopt this year's budget. Thank you so much, Chief, for all your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have no other requests for comment. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Fire Department. Mr. Clegg, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate you tuning in and listening in and asking questions. We will be back on May 19th to cover additional departments, as well as I think we'll be prepared at that point to present some of those potential decision points for council to get some initial feedback before we get into June.
Thank you. We stand adjourned at 2:32.